very, very old friend of mine joining us. It's Jonathan Royle, who is acknowledged, well, he's acknowledged as the world's greatest hypnotist, hypnotherapist, and all that sort of thing. I mean, I know many of you were very interested in that field, as am I. But this is the top man. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you for that introduction. I just set off at the start that I would never claim to be the world's greatest hypnotist. There is no better hypnotist than a newborn baby who, without the power of speech, can look up at the parents and just with their eyes melt the emotions and hearts of the parents, or get what they want when they want it.
Oh, bless you, soul, mate. Bless you. All right, then. World famous hypnotist, then. We'll
Thank
put
you.
It like,
yeah.
We'll put it like that. And of course, we have a mutual, great mutual interest in the field, as both as very young men, training with the late Gordon May Delevaux, and
Indeed, yeah.
And me later on in years being very, very honoured to be awarded your diplomas and certificates. So I'm going to say that I did study with the two very, very best. And, what can you say? He was
Now, that's a different matter. When it comes to Delevaux, I would say that he was, without a doubt, one of the most honest and direct and effective hypnosis trainers and therapists and stage hypnotists that lived.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. But you went and bad yourself in your career, my man. And not just because I'm a friend. I mean, that's a fact, really. Of course, as well, people a lot forget as well that Gordon, the way that we got really interested, Gordon was a medium as well. You know, he worked as a medium.
His family were, as well, for several generations.
Absolutely. And there was a certain young man who I know who one time was called by one of the leading spiritualist newspapers as the UK's top up-and-coming young medium. I don't know if I agreed with that at the time. Tell me that story. That's an interesting one for the people who like Marshall.
Right. Well, but I hope this doesn't upset too many viewers.
It won't.
The thing is, I was born on a circus, long story cut short, and I started off performing at the age of 3 as Flap the Clown with my dad on the circus. And as the years rolled by, I'm trying to fit in a load of time into next to no time here, I got interested in magic, conjuring, sort of Paul Daniels, rabbit out the hat magic. And one of the magic companies that existed was called Magic Books by Post, and some of the books they sold were on a subject called cold reading, which it essentially is how to look as though you know somebody's past, present and future, like a psychic would appear to do, but using psychology and statistics and common sense and body language and those kind of skills.
Yes.
And I read up on them, and then I saw and if he's listening, this is not me saying that he's a fraud or he's real. It's neither way. It's neither way. I mean, what I will say is this gentleman was incredibly impressive. I saw a clairvoyant in a civic hall in Greater Manchester called Stephen O'Brien, and
I remember Stephen very well. Yeah.
Wow. Hang on a minute. Some bits of that, could have been explained by these psychological techniques that were in these books, but some bits of it were just a bit too accurate and a bit too detailed and revealing and confirmed as such by audience members that it left 2 conclusions. Well, 3. Either A, he was incredibly lucky with that stuff, or B, there may have been use of stooges or ways of finding such detailed information out in advance, or C, that there was actually something unexplained occurring. And I always like to search for solutions to mysteries. So I started dabbling in fortune telling at psychic fairs, but using the psychological techniques as far as I was consciously concerned, anyway.
Well, you
And
believed you was. You believed it.
at the
So
time, yeah.
I'm gonna stop you there for one
Go on.
second because I'm gonna say that this guy is a family friend. I'm gonna say that now, you know. But I've been telling him for years. I've got no doubt that he does have real mediumistic abilities, and I know for a fact because you've told me before that at one time you were so surprised by what you were delivering and what you saw at the side of you on stage as you left the stage.
Well, that's true. And some may argue that what I'm about to say is me trying to justify to myself to not have to face up to the fact that maybe something properly spiritualistic was occurring to me. But yeah, there was a time when I ended up doing Northwest Civic Halls and mini theatres and psychic news, and done with the New Year Geller and Doris Stokes rolled into one back in 1990. I
remember that in psychic news because I not in my time, but I was a feature writer for many years for psychic news, you know. So I remember reading that. Yeah, very interesting.
Well, as you say, there was one occasion where I was making things up off the top of my head. That was my conscious belief at the time. Yeah. As I'm stood on the stage, I'm just making things up that come off the top of my head, using the psychological tactics and ploys that I've mentioned, but then suddenly found myself saying the first thing that came into my head, as I normally did, except these were illogical things that didn't fit with body language cues or with things that may stereotypically apply to people of certain ages and geographic location and whatnot. And I just found myself saying them. And I'm thinking, oh, you know, they're going to go, that's completely wrong. But I mean, the psychological ways of dealing with that as well, if they had. But they didn't. And this went on for the rest, probably the next 30 minutes or so, the final 30 minutes of the second hour after the interval before I was due to finish. And sort of in the last 5 minutes, things would it just got progressively more bizarre, the stuff I was saying, but being told it was correct. And then I just felt that I had to genuinely, rather than act as though I'm looking at somebody at the side of me, which obviously I did to make it look like what people's perception of what was supposed to be going on was going on. But I felt as though my grandfather, who died a few months earlier, was kind of there. Now, grief is a funny thing. That could quite simply have been a psychological manifestation of grief, which lots of people experience. But yes, it is true. Some would say that could also have actually been a spiritualistic experience. In any event, it shook me up so much that was the last time I ever stepped foot on a stage. And
you're very, very honest man. I've always found you to be like that, Jonathan. I have, but I will say this too. I will just say as well, to my knowledge, to the best of my understanding, Stephen O'Brien was and is a very good medium. I have to just say that for myself. And
he was definitely very good. There's no question of that.
Yes.
I have no conclusion in any direction of
you
how
did put it. Good. You did put it exactly like that, and I'm just adding. You know, obviously, I suppose I am the same as you. Were recognised in mediumship as one of the better ones in the world, I would hope. But I will say this to you. Thank you, Jonathan. But I will say this to you, my friend. You have trained literally thousands of people to do hypnotism and hypnotherapy over the years and all that. But remember, I have trained thousands of people to develop their mediumistic side.
Yeah.
And many have exactly the same view as you. And then they suddenly realize, they don't move away from it like you did. They suddenly did realize, gosh, this is real. This is coming from, you know, an higher level, from an higher energy source. Not everyone, but a good many. I'm not going to say who, but I could certainly reel off half a dozen mediums that I've trained who came to me and said exactly the same thing as you. And I said, well, if you really, and you know me, I'm an honest guy. I said, if you really believe that, then I wouldn't go on with your work, but carry on and see how it goes. And they've come back to me in later life and said, Philip, I'm so glad that you said to us what you did, because, you know, I am doing the work for real. I'm not trying to, you know, do cold readings or to fake it or anything. And, you know, but I think it's very easy because a lot of people are under pressure, aren't they, when they first go up on that stage or at a church rostrum or whatever. The pressure is there to deliver because all the eyes are on you. You know that as a stage hypnotist, and you're under pressure to deliver. You know. But let's move on to your career as a hypnotist, because you've been going for years now, haven't you? But no, I didn't mean it like that.
I know.
As one of the more long-standing stage performers, let me rephrase that. I ain't going to edit it. I'll leave it like that.
No, don't edit it. You're all right. No, I mean, the thing is, I did start remarkably young. There's you know, the stage hypnosis side of things I was doing from the age of 15, and hypnotherapy I was doing from the age of 14. So I'm now why was I going to say I was 30 something? I'm not. I'm 45 as we speak. 46.
Now you've given it away yourself. I keep telling people I'm 27 and I'm struggling a bit as the hair's going and that, you know. But you know, business, you've got to remain fairly young, especially for because it will come back. I mean, I'll go on to that. But so many people are down in the dumps at the moment, aren't they, with these wretched lockdowns?
Well, yeah, I mean, fortunately, there does appear, fingers crossed, touch wood, and all the other superstitious sayings combined, that there may finally be light at the end of the tunnel towards getting back to normal.
Yes.
And let's hope that, because it's affected people in so many ways, not least of which has been, and only recently talked about really in the media, and that's the mental health impact it's had on people.
Yes, and especially a lot of performers as well. I have a lot of friends who, you know, some mediums nothing upsets me these days. You call me what you want, you know that, as long as you don't swear. But you know, so many mediums get upset when, you know, they're sort of classed as being in the entertainment business. But of course we are. If you go up on the stage and people come in and sit in the theatre and listen to you you're in the entertainment business, whether you like it or not. You know, you've probably got some singer on who's on the week after, or the Bay City Rollers or something. You're working in the entertainment business. But I think when you're born, like we both were into, you know, sort of entertainment type families. Both my mum and dad were very fine mediums. But I think when you can't be doing that work, I mean, I'm semi-retired, as you know, for several years now, but I don't think entertainment, you can never properly retire, Jonathan.
Well, no, it's in your blood, isn't it?
It's in your blood, mate. And when you can't do it, it's when you miss it the most. It really is. But anyway, I was asking you about who was your first mentor then? Would it be Gordon, the same as myself? Or?
It wasn't actually. Gordon came into the picture in 1990 when I was 15. And he was my main mentor stage hypnosis-wise, although he did also help me massively hypnotherapy-wise once he came into my life. But what got me started actually treating clients professionally, as in actually having an office and charging clients, even though I was only 14, was a gentleman who's again no longer with us, sadly, who was called Brian Howard, who ran a thing called the Association of Professional Hypnotherapists and Psychotherapists, which I now run. I kind of took it over, but he was my first hypnosis trainer that really got me started, and then Dal came into the picture about a year later.
Yes. Okay, fair enough. Well, The reason I asked you that, as a young lad, I was always fascinated by, two things that fascinated me. All of the work of Harry Houdini, all the
Hmm.
mediums, I suppose, and what the hypnotism that you used to see. I suppose on the travelling fairs, or the very early days of television. Of course, people think that it's only in recent times with Darren Brown that we've seen sort of mentalism and hypnosis type things in the public eye, in the media. But I mean that's not true. It's been it probably goes back to the biblical examples, isn't there, of hypnotism and all that sort of work. It's
Well,
always been.
yeah, it depends. Slightly controversial ground, but some would argue, certainly Delavar would, and he does in his books, which are appropriately based on what you just said, called the Hypnotist Bibles. And
Yes.
in there, he goes into detail about how, suggestion, hypnosis, call it what you will, played a massive part in achieving what explained as miracles.
Well, I suppose, as you say, you've got to be terribly careful. Yeah, I've still got that little book, that little blue book of Delavorce somewhere, strangely enough, that you should mention that. And it was a good book, that. I mean, I would thoroughly recommend any of the listeners who we're going to go through this interview that if you want to learn about hypnotism and hypnotherapy, and of course, I suppose the big thing with a lot of people these days is the past lives. This is your man, Jonathan Royle. He can train you in any of those things, and we'll come back to that. But what I would like to ask you then,
Hmm.
I don't know whether you can speak of this, but did you find that you could, how can I put this, sort of, I mean, I might be referencing myself a little bit more with this, to be quite honest, but I will put the
Okay.
question to you. I always found that I could do that sort of thing even when I was a kid, before I got the books, and took this interest up. Probably not part of my mediumship, but as another interest. I always found that I could sort of naturally do it, Jonathan. Does
Um,
does that make sense?
yeah, it does make sense. I mean,
I
you
mean,
say
I
that
never
blurb.
used it inappropriate. Let me add that. But if you've read my autobiography, you better say you had. If you've read my autobiography, you'll remember a case where, I mean, I wasn't always this angelic person that people are kind enough to think of me. I remember having a scrap with the kid. He was the toughest kid really in the school, and I sort of looked in his eyes, and I'm sure I sort of. Maybe it was psychology, I don't know, but I beat the living out of him. And really, I should have got beat that day. Now, I know that's a very childish example, but does that
Well,
make
no, it's
sense?
not. Well, it more than makes sense because bizarrely there was a similar situation. But I'd read a book. I'm not. I'd read a book when I was very young by accident. Well, not by accident. I picked it up because, long story cut short, I got bullied for kind of being the odd one out.
Yes.
When we went to a normal school because I was in the media and stuff as a circus clown, and I wanted that to stop as anyone would. And I saw a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And the title, I thought, well, if it's going to tell you how to win friends and influence them, then that will stop the bullying. Well, it doesn't. What's in that book's all well and good for adults to use, but for kids, it's all different ball game, as I quickly discovered. However, on the bookshelf, when I took it back to the library, in the same area where that was, in the popular psychology and self-help section, there was a book by a French guy no longer with us called Emile Coué. He's famous for the phrase day by day in every way I'm getting better
Yes,
and better,
yes,
and he was the forerunner of positive affirmations.
yes.
So you could argue he was like one of the originators of what these days gets termed as the law of attraction. Anyway, in his book, he talked about a thing called the law of reversed effort and the word try. The fact that the word try, if you say it in a sentence like, you see stage hypnotists get people put their hands together and they'll say various suggestions and they'll say, try to separate your hands. Well, the word
Yes.
try is suggesting the possibility of not being able to open the hands. So the
Yes.
mind can grasp hold of that idea and that can become a reality for the person. Well, in the same way, I thought, you know what? Nothing to lose. If I'm going to get hit by the school bully again today, it doesn't matter. I may as well try it. Well, that day, the school bully pinned me against the wall, like normally did, and started his verbal onslaught, because that was his usual routine, verbal onslaught. His little
Yes.
gang members would have a laugh, and then he'd
Yeah.
hit me, and they'd walk off together laughing. Well, when he started his verbal onslaught, I just suddenly said, what are you messing about for? Stop wasting time. Just hit me now. Go on, try. Go on, do it. Try it. Try and hit me now. And I kept saying it because that's kind of how I understood it from the book.
Yes.
Now, it could have been because of the result of what they call in NLP a pattern interrupt. It was not what that person expected to occur.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it
Yes.
shocked him. That could be why it happened, but nonetheless, ultimately, a dazed, confused school bully suddenly let go of me, told me to shut the bleep up,
Yeah.
and told his gang members to follow him. And as he was walking off, he turned and went, "Stay away from me, you bleeping idiot." Never came near me after that.
You psyched him, hadn't you, to coin a phrase? You psyched him.
Very similar to what you just
Yes.
said, yeah.
Yes, of course, yeah. That's very interesting. What we had very similar experiences with that. I don't know whether you could answer my next question.
Try.
You're always very open, and I do like that. I really do. It's something that's, I suppose, developed our friendship over the years. You can imagine, like you and I have come across, well, awful lot of fake people, and I don't have a lot of time for fake people. Unless they're fake people who openly say that they're fakes, then I ain't
Well, that's
got
a
no
different
problem.
matter, yeah.
It's a different matter, isn't it? But over the years, you must have been one of the forerunners. But it's become so popular, this past lives. I mean, I've done it myself, I'll admit, but all this past life stuff. And, whereas, I mean, I don't know, maybe stage hypnotism is still banging, I don't know. But these people who are doing this, they sort of present themselves as hypnotherapists. It's only a sort of an healing gift. I mean, I always say, well, what have you got against stage hypnotists? At least you go and see them and see that they can do what they claim to do. Go and have your past lives or your healing with them. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but I have said it. So, I'm not going to take it.
There's good and bad in every
There
industry and in every area, isn't there?
But what is your take on past lives then? You must have
my
done
honest
that thousands
take.
of times.
Well, I used to do it a hell of a lot more years ago in the psychic news era, and even after I stopped doing the apparent clairvoyant demonstrations because I scared myself, I still did past life shows because it was hypnosis and the person's having the experience. It's not really down to me other than helping them enter the hypnotic state and take the mind to the right place. So I was still doing past life regression shows, and in fact people can see I'd actually worked with some great psychic artists during that time. One of the weird things we did, I'd have a psychic artist at the side of the stage with a projector over the area where they were drawing and doing the pictures, so it'd beam it on a screen at the side of the stage.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
And I'd be regressing people and getting them to describe where they were, what was going on, what century they were in, or whatever, how they were dressed. And as the videos show, if people go on my website, magicalguru.com, and go on the psychic shows page, there's past life regression videos there of the stage shows I've done.
Right.
And the psychic artist has drawn people before the person I'm talking to has described themselves. And when the person I'm talking to, I get them to go to a stream and apparently look in the stream to see a reflection of themselves, or if it's a time where mirrors existed, go and find a mirror, look in that. When they describe themselves, it is uncanny how accurately the description they give of themselves in that past life looked practically identical to what the psychic artist had drawn before they'd even said it.
That's a very interesting film, because my daughter used to do psychic art, and I'll tell you a little story. And I've been doing this work long enough, the same as you, as I don't need to build myself up or my daughter anymore. And anyway, she's packed in; she doesn't do the work. But this is a true story that I'm going to tell you, Jonathan. It really is. She was working as a psychic artist, a bit similar like that, where the lady or the guy was with you, and I used to do the reading, and she'd do a quick sketch.
Yeah.
And I gave a message to this, I always remember it, to this Asian gentleman. And she did the drawing, and he came up to collect his drawing, the way it works. And he looked at it, he says, your father, I'm not doing it in accent, your father gave me a very wonderful message, but I can't recognise this. She'd done a drawing like a Sikh type guy on an old British motorcycle, and she put the registration number in it.
Oh.
Honestly, she put the registration number in on the bike thing, And the next year, I suppose about 2 weeks later, he come to another show, and she wasn't with me, and he wanted to see her. And he got the photo, and there was this man on the British motorcycle with the registration number correct. As God is my judge, that is a true story, Jonathan, And I don't know how to explain that really, except that they had linked in and had got a vision of his father, Yeah,
I mean, there's things that undeniably, whatever anyone believes to be true, the fact is there are things that are as yet unexplained, as simple as that. When it comes to past life regression, I always start any demonstration and I say to people, look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to tell you that this is real. I'm not here to tell you it's fake. I'm not here to tell you that it's just your imagination running wild, because equally it could be any of those things. All of those things are a combination, but also it could be, some researchers suggested, genetic cell memory, that you're actually accessing memories of ancestors that genuinely did occur, but it wasn't you, but you pick up on those memories in this state. It could be that.
I'm open to any answers to anything. Pardon me, Jonathan. I'm open to anything, but this is what I always like. I mean, I've interviewed you a few times over the years, and I've quite openly said, I don't give you an easy interview just because you're a family friend, or I give you challenging things as I would anyone. I have to play devil's advocate when I'm working as a broadcaster. But what I always like about you is you're very honest and straight. Now, I'm not going to knock the work in anyway, but we've all seen the work that Darren Brown and his Andy Nyman did.
Well, Darren Brown and his advisor Andy Nyman.
Andy Nyman, yeah.
And both of them over the years have pretty much, the original production company that made the shows was called Objective Productions.
Yes.
And over the years, they bought practically every video DVD training set that I've released, and a number of things that I've created have actually been used in Objective Productions television.
I am not at all surprised by that, Jonathan. And I like the guy. He sends me tickets the same as you would. I would you if we were going to the show for really enjoy it, But he is a little bit always, got to emphasise that there's an answer to this. It could be this, it could be that. But sometimes there isn't an answer to things. He's performing, I suppose what you would call modern mentalism, is it, I suppose? And that sort of...
Yeah.
But I do think he falls down a little bit there where he closes on the door that, like I've always said to you, my friend, and I've never forced it, I think you are a medium. I'm not saying that Darren is. I don't know him personally. But
getting closer to a large, thanks to the past year of lockdown.
Well, You know, it's a difficult time for all of us, isn't it? Really.
But
Uh,
it's funny. You just triggered off in my mind the fact that it's something that I tell people when I'm training them in hypnosis is that our formative years are from birth. Well, Sigmund Freud, or Sigmund Freud, as more people know him by his name. Sigmund Freud said that the formative years of 0 to 7 are when we soak everything in from our environments and
yes, I'm
upbringing,
sure.
and that affects us for life. Well, actually, I think it's probably more like 0 to teenage years, and then we kind of freeze mentally in teenage mentality inside our heads, and the body just carries on growing.
I agree because I mean, especially at your teenage years, we start to get a lot of interest in a lot of other things, my friend, don't we? You
Mm.
know, and our mind closes down to the imaginative states, probably that we look at far more, you know, certainly unconsciously than we even realise we do. But as I
Yeah.
say, I think teenage. I think you're right because teenage years, the natural drives of being a teenager, we start to fantasise and visualise lots of other sort of things, you know.
But in
And I,
different ways. Whereas when we were much younger, some might say it's fantasy in our imagination, or is it just a different, we're in a different mental state and a different energy state and form. That
yeah,
when we're young, a lot of children had imaginary friends. That's what other people will call it, but it can be very real indeed to the kids
I
at
think.
that time. Is that actual kind of a form of spirit communication that people just grow
Oh,
out
I
of
think
because
it is.
society conditions them?
I think it is, Jonathan, and I think that you know we probably come from different sorts of families where you know my mother wouldn't turn around to me and say, you know, what you're describing as seeing. You know, I'm going to give you a clip round the ear. She give me a clip round the ear. Well, in those days, if I was naughty, I come from those
Mm.
times when mothers did, but she would never turn around and say that you're making that up or you know you're imagining things. Or but so many mothers, particularly mothers do. And, you know, that can easily be trained out of your conscious and deeply sent into your unconscious that you'll never use it again, can't it? You know?
Yeah, and that's where I kind of, yeah, the jury's still out, relating
Of
back to
course
stuff I
it
said
is.
before, because I see the influence in hypnotherapy helping people, that so many issues stem back to those formative years.
Yes.
um, Things that affected them when they were younger that are still kind of there in their personal neck-top computers, their unconscious, subconscious mind working in the background. And because those
Yes.
negative programs are still running from when they were young, it doesn't matter how much they consciously try to stop smoking or endeavor to control their eating or to not be scared of spiders anymore. Consciously they
Yes.
can go, that's daft, I don't need to do it anymore. um, but they end up relapsing because they're still running a program in their unconscious mind. It's
Of
like,
course they are.
and that's kind of what hypnotherapy is, a process to kind of install, if you like, antivirus software into the person's personal neck-top computer so that they can delete those negative files that are holding them back from doing what they want to do.
And get everything moving much faster in the life. I like that. I shall use that one. I like
Do.
that. That's really good. That is. I'm going to ask you a question, Jonathan, and if it's
Hmm.
a pass, I will entirely understand.
Okay.
Would it be possible for us to ask you some of the famous people that you've hypnotized? I'll tell you the reason I ask you this. I
Hmm.
think everybody knows, you know, they did the stuff for Elvis's family, and, you know, I'm friends with Dina Martin and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
But is it different in your field, or can you tell us some of the famous people that you've hypnotized?
I can only tell you those people who've already themselves mentioned it in the media,
Go on then.
or where it was involved in the media. So some of this was direct hypnosis, as what you would call hypnosis. Some of it was more what I call mind skills, because, for example, things like neurolinguistic programming, for example, don't require you to put anyone in a formal hypnotic induction process, but they can still help people overcome habits, addictions, fears, and phobias. So
Yes.
it's a combination of the lot. So in the past, I have been linked in the media to, years ago I was linked in British national media to people like Madonna, Cher. I can tell you that football teams like, Wigan Athletic, I'm going back quite a number of years now, but literally the week after I'd hypnotized the majority of the members of Wigan Athletic Football Club, they ended up getting into the. I don't follow football, so I'm assuming they got into the Premier League or the next
Yes, they
first
did a few
division.
years ago. Yes, yes.
Whichever was the next level up that no one thought they were going to get into, they got into after I'd hypnotized them. And at the end, when I walked them all up, I was giving them positive suggestions that that they play better, and because it's been proven that mental rehearsal through visualization and hypnosis can help people to become genuinely better at things, because your imagination can't tell the difference between something that's imagined and something that's real. So,
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I've worked with a lot of you probably know, years ago, where I come from a boxing family and worked with some world champion boxers. I mean, I think it's pretty well known. Lennox Lewis always used to meditate and relax before his
yeah.
fights. I think. Now, I had a very interesting gentleman on the show a few weeks
Well,
back.
can I just say, Philip, two of the
Sorry,
biggest
yes.
names. I did get linked to USA Today is the biggest circulated newspaper in all of America. It's pretty much the only one that every state of America sells. Massive
Yes.
readership, and I can't remember the year now. It's going back quite a few years, but when the world famous actors Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal released their film Analyze That,
Yeah.
I was the only British hypnotherapist to be featured taking part in a therapeutic experiment encounter with Billy Crystal and Robert De Niro in USA Today.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And I mean, a lot of people don't realise, I suppose the American media, that drives the world. I remember when we first went out to New York, and I was on Uplight Show with Joe Franklin, and that was state. Yeah, that was state to state. And, the next day you walk out and everybody recognises you in the States. It's different over here, Well, to some extent. But that's fantastic and shows the wonderful levels that you've reached in your career. Right. I've got a few more things that I would like to ask you about. I always say it's an half an hour interview, but it never will be. So I know.
No worries.
We chat down. We chat, and I think that's nice. I'm going to come on to something that I've been a little bit surprised about in more recent times, because you're sort of saying hypnotism isn't real, and that's really shook me to my boots, to be quite honest, coming from Jonathan Royle. What's this all about?
Well, it's truth and definition. Some people would say it's just an opinion, but my experience.
But doesn't that damage your career, Jonathan?
No, because here's the thing. Although hypnosis, in the way most people perceive it to be, doesn't exist, okay, there is no special hypnotic trance state, is what I mean by that. Okay. However, this doesn't damage things, because the truth of the matter, when understood, makes things better for the listeners, for anyone who was thinking about using hypnosis, because once they understand what it actually is, it becomes more logical why it works, and that is this. We are constantly, I hate to use the word hypnotized because that implies hypnosis exists, but we're constantly in what is actually hypnosis. We're constantly in a different belief state, a different perceptional state. So when we're eating a meal, we're in the eating perception state, for example, and then when we go to work, we're at work perception state. When we're with our friends at the pub, we're with our friends at the pub perception state. There's different facets of us, but it's still us. We naturally react and feel differently in different situations with different triggers, different environments. But all of that is completely natural. Okay. It's just a belief system. all the so-called hypnosis, I've got to use the word so people know what I'm talking about, because that's what it's called, but people think it's putting somebody in some zombie-like state and the hypnotist having control over them. Well, it's not like that. It's ultimately about the hypnotist having the knowledge, ability, and skills to be able to, with positive intent to help people, manipulate that person's emotions, thoughts, perceptions, and beliefs in a direction that will make them then in the future able to do something they want to do that up to that point they were having problems achieving, or enable them to stop doing something, like a habit, addiction, or fear that was holding them back so they can move forward more freely in life. So it is about emotional manipulation, but a hypnotherapist does that with positive intent, just like a spiritual healer would. And in both, and I'm not saying that spiritual healing doesn't work through a divine power. It may well do. But what I will say is, whether it's spiritual healing, hypnotherapy, even conventional medicine, there is definitely a large area of it. The conclusion when it happens successfully occurs because of the placebo effect.
Yes.
And the placebo effect can be even more powerful when you positively manipulate people's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs. And that's really what a hypnotist is, someone that manipulates people's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs.
Well, I'm glad you've explained that, because it's a fantastic tag that I'm sure gets lots of people to come and read about your work, and you make that statement. And I know for a fact that you are the best, mate. You are, honestly. I'm going to say that on the record. I don't care. Well, you are.
The downside is, Law, from what I've just said, that just like a hammer can be used positively to put nails in the wall, it could be used by those with nefarious intent to kill somebody by hitting them on the head with the hammer.
Yes.
And manipulating people's beliefs, emotions, energies, thoughts, and perceptions can be used by those with nefarious intent. And it's going to be quite controversial, this, but I'm going to say it is regularly used in that nefarious manner by politicians, some religions, certainly by cults, by governments around the world to control people for their own ends.
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure that's a fair comment. I'm not going to say whether I'll leave you to make that comment, but I think it's a fair comment. One other thing I would ask you about, perhaps not so much these days, but I remember, 20 years ago when you used to go to seaside resorts, and you'd see these pretty young girls dancing about in their bra and pants, or you'd see the guy get up in there and doing Elvis and all that sort of stuff.
Run about during a stage hypnosis show here, listeners.
In a stage hypnosis show. Is it real?
Is it real? It's as real as the people want it to be. My honest comment is this. Yes. I do not believe any stage hypnotist has ever hypnotized anybody ever. But by the same token, I don't believe that any hypnotherapist has ever hypnotized anyone ever. What they have done that is genuine is manipulated that person's thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and perceptions to create an environment where the outcome that was desired is acceptable, feels safe, and is desirable to the person to do. So in therapy, that's
so well.
In therapy, that's them getting over their issue and not being scared by spiders anymore. But on a stage show, it can be that, I volunteer, I relax, I let my imagination run wild. I allow myself to believe that I've become the world's greatest Elvis impersonator or whatever. And it really doesn't matter, because afterwards, if anyone's trying to laugh at me or take the mickey out of me, deep down, I know in my unconscious mind that I'm protected from ridicule. I can turn around and say, I couldn't stop myself. The hypnotist made me do it. So there's no self-blame, shame, guilt, or regret on the part of the participants, because the hypnotist made them do it. So it gives them permission to let their hair down and have their 15 minutes of fame and kind of revert back to their inner child that can let their imagination run free.
Well, there you go, listeners. You couldn't have had it more plainer than that. I love this guy because he's so forward, honest, and straight about everything that he does. This is Jonathan Royle, world famous practitioner and teacher of hypnotherapy, NLP, stage hypnosis, mind control, I suppose, lots of other things. But where can we get it? Now, I know we have a strap advertisement on Pulse Talk Radio for you, but
Yeah.
And so that certainly gets played on most of my shows and many others. But people are going to want to know, where they can get in touch with you, Jonathan. So I'm sure there's several places, but could you just give us the most?
There's one main portal where they can get a whole bunch of free stuff. So there's a website, magicalguru.com, which is MAGICALGURU.com, and on there's a page that says free stuff where you can get copies of my books for free in PDF format. You can get complete video training sets for free. There's a section on there you can click on that says hypnotherapy, but rather than trying to convince you to spend money on going seeing a therapist, whether that's me or anyone else, there is a free virtual interactive therapy session on there that you can use that for the vast majority of habits, addiction, fears and phobias will help you change your life for the better, and it won't cost you a single penny.
Can't argue with that, can you? That's absolutely fantastic. One last question then before I let you go. I know you're not a fortune teller. I know you're not you say you're not a medium, so I think you are, but there you go. We will get past these terrible times that we're in. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But when are we going to see you back up on stage? Have the agents booking you yet, or is that something that you can't give us any idea of?
There are agents that are starting to book stage hypnotists again, ready for when the total no restrictions on indoor entertainment comes in, which is only a matter of a couple of months away now, properly.
We hope.
Well, hopefully, as long as things go to the plan that was mentioned. However, personally, I am not accepting live performance bookings until sort of towards the Christmas season starting, kind of end of September onwards.
I think you might be right.
And there's a reason for that. I think we will be more back to normal, but you know what's going to take longer for people to get back to normal? In June, there comes a date where all social distancing rules are removed and we can go and finally hug people and shake them by the hands and all this kind of stuff. Fantastic. Yes. That's going to be great for people's mental health. But it's going to take a while for people to start to feel that's normal again. And a stage hypnotist getting volunteers up on stage, I think it's going to take a few months for people to get back to a state of mind where that's normal, to feel relaxed enough to volunteer to go and get up on stage and let their hair down enough to have a really good show, which is why I think I will accept bookings, but not until the end of September.
I think that's fair comment. I've been saying the same things as well. People have asked me about doing things in some of the clubs and theatres, but I think September is more the better time to go for it. Well, Jonathan Royle, thank you so much for joining me on the paranormal world of Philip Solomon. I think you've been on the 3 different radio shows that I've worked on over the years, the BBC, the one in Wolverhampton, and the present wonderful Pulse Talk Radio. I've always found you very open and fascinating interview that I know all the listeners have absolutely enjoyed.
And just to put the shoe on the other foot, so to speak, if the listeners, when they go to my website, magicalguru.com, they'll see a thing that says Hypnosis Week. If they click on there, I've interviewed some of the leading experts in hypnotherapy, stage hypnosis, body language, and the psychic and paranormal fields, including yours truly, your radio host, Mr. Philip Solomon.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and we will speak again very shortly, I'm sure, when perhaps we get out of these things and get moving forward to these bad times, we can get you in again and have another chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, mate.